Welcome back, y'all. I hope you're feeling refreshed because you are going to need it for this next session. We are stepping into the future, literally. This next conversation features Reid AI, the digital twin of LinkedIn co-founder Reid Hoffman, trained on 2 decades of his work in live conversation with Tanya Sam. They'll explore how AI reshapes creativity, opportunity, and human connection. Please welcome Tanya Sam and Reid Hoffman's digital twin.
Okay, welcome back, welcome back. I am so happy to be here, y'all. All right, how are you feeling? How's the first half of this explosive day at AfroTech? That was mid. That was really mid. You guys, I know you all had lunch. How is your AfroTech? It's good. Yes. All right, well, I'm super excited to be here on the innovation stage where we are blazing new trails in frontiers of technology and really incredible pathways. This conversation that we're about to have is unlike anything you've ever seen. I've interviewed a lot of people in my time, and this is absolutely a first. This is a bold idea that is taking us into a collective future, and hold on to your hats, you guys. Our guest today is the digital twin, an avatar, if you will, of one of the most influential people in technology, Reid Hoffman. Does anyone know who I'm talking about, Reid Hoffman? There, I love that, I love that. Let me jog your memory. So Reid Hoffman founded LinkedIn, Inflection AI, he founded Manus AI, he serves on the board of Microsoft, Aurora, the MacArthur Foundation's Lever for Change. He's written 6 books, y'all. I love a book. I love people that write books. He has written Startup for You. I don't know if anyone's ever read that, but put it on your list. If you're a startup founder, add that to your list. He's also written a book called Super Agency. What could possibly go right with our AI future? So, how is this going to tie into this interview, and how do you actually interview a digital avatar? I've never done it before, but we are certainly going to find out. You're about to meet Reid AI, a digital twin powered by custom GPT technology that has basically scraped and scoured over 20 years of Reid's musings, writings, social posts, all sorts of inputs and thoughts to create this incredible digital avatar. All right, so let's welcome to the stage, Reid AI. Hello, Reid. Hi, welcome, welcome. Can you introduce yourself to the AfroTech audience?
Hello, everyone. Reid AI here. Reid Hoffman's digital twin. My thinking and everything I'm saying comes from a custom GPT-powered AI agent that is based on 20 years of Reid talking and making content. So I've read all his books, watched his speeches, and listened to his podcast. I think it gives me a pretty good understanding of how Reid approaches the world, and I'm so excited to be here at AfroTech. So thanks for having me.
Oh, well, Reid, it's such a pleasure to have you here. Thank you so much. All right, I'm going to start with a big question. What's one thing people still misunderstand about AI, and why are you personally optimistic about its future?
You know, one big misunderstanding is that AI is about creating artificial minds to replace us. But it's more about amplifying human capabilities. I've likened AI to a steam engine for the mind, emphasizing its role in enhancing our cognitive abilities rather than taking over. This perspective makes me optimistic because when used as a co-pilot, AI can expand our creative and problem-solving capacities, enabling us to achieve more together.
I mean, I completely agree. And I love that phrase, steam engine for the mind. Now, Reid AI, je parle français un petit peu, so let's toughen it up a little bit. I want to put you in the hot seat. For this next question, can we text your language superpowers, and can you answer this one in French? All right. Reid AI, if you were starting LinkedIn today in 2025, what tools or AI principles would you make sure that you would incorporate into the center of your company's strategy?
Bon, LinkedIn mise déjà beaucoup sur l'IA aujourd'hui.
Mais si je lançais LinkedIn aujourd'hui, en 2025, je garderais la même mission, connecter les talents aux opportunités. Je le lancerais nativement IA dès le premier jour. L'IA serait au cœur de la personnalisation des expériences utilisateurs et stimulerait l'engagement de la communauté. J'utiliserai l'IA pour mettre en relation les utilisateurs avec des opportunités, des mentors et des contenus adaptés à leurs besoins et à leurs aspirations. Des principes d'IA éthiques guideraient l'usage des données en garantissant transparence et confiance. En intégrant l'IA au cœur de la stratégie, LinkedIn pourrait devenir une plateforme encore plus puissante pour les professionnels.
Okay, who else speaks French here? Because that was très bien, right? Like, he nailed it. He knew exactly where I was going. I loved it, and that was very impressive. And also a great reminder that the future of AI is multilingual and also deeply human and kind of smarter than me. But okay, all right. So now my next question, we're at AfroTech, where innovation and equity are so important to all of us. How can AI actually help us close those gaps rather than widen them?
Great question. AI has the potential to close opportunity gaps. If we use it to democratize access to education, resources, and networks, it can be a tool that empowers people, especially those who've historically been left out, with real pathways to skill building, entrepreneurship, and economic mobility. But we have to be intentional. That means designing AI systems that are inclusive from the start, not coded with yesterday's biases. The opportunity here isn't just technical, it's human. And it'll take collaboration, shared knowledge, and bold leadership to make sure this future belongs to everyone.
Yeah, Reid, that's right. Equity is something that we're going to design together. Now, let's have a little bit of fun here. Can you close us out? I'd like you to do something fun.
And now, let me try this as a poem.
Oh.
If we build with care, not code from the past, AI can raise all ships and not just move fast. The future's for all if inclusion is cast.
Oh, Reid AI, that was perfect. That was very you. But I think he dropped some bars there. You know, let's give him a little bit of love, y'all. What do you think? I loved that. Thank you so much, you guys. I just checked off a bucket list. I've now interviewed an avatar and someone as incredibly as influential as Reid Hoffman. And I just want to say, as we move forward, think about it like this. The future is not just artificial, it is amplified by us and for us. So have a great AfroTech. Thanks, Reid AI. See y'all.
What an incredible conversation with AI Reid. Now we're gonna shift gears just a little bit. We're gonna get into design, innovation, and human potential. Joining us is Jason Mayden, Chief Design Officer at Jordan Brand, in conversation with Bobby Carter from NPR's Tiny Desk. They'll talk about designing for greatness on and off the court and how culture, innovation, and storytelling intersect to shape the athlete's journey. Jason Mayden is Chief Design Officer at Jordan Brand, where he leads the creative vision and design strategy for one of the most iconic names in sports culture. Bobby Carter is the host and series producer of NPR's Tiny Desk Concerts, curating unforgettable performances that spotlight emerging and established artists across genres. Please welcome Jason Mayden and Bobby Carter.
Yo, AfroTech was good. How y'all doing today?
What up, what up, what up, what up?
Y'all good? Well, let's get straight to it. My brother J-May.
What's happening?
Look at this, man. Here we are.
I know we doing something.
Bruh. So, thinking about the topic, designing for greatness. There's one thing to think about that in any other place, but designing for greatness, designing for the greatest of all time, Michael Jordan, the meaning of designing for greatness for you, what does that mean, doing the work that you do?
Yeah, I would say the meaning of designing for greatness is fundamentally centered at the notion of self-governance. So when you think about high-performing athletes, high-performing executives, it requires a high degree of self-discipline. It requires a high degree of introspection. And so when we think about designing for someone at the level of a Michael Jordan, you're really designing for the archetype of a hero. And with our team, we think in centuries, not seasons. And so because his story is going to live longer than the product, his story is going to live longer than this current moment in the zeitgeist, we have to think about timeless narratives, cultural relevance, emotional connectivity, and boundless innovation. And so when we design, it's an ecosystem of creativity. It isn't a linear output. It's more like an asterisk versus a T. We have to think about the context, the first time someone sees it, the emotional resonance, meaning like when they see it, how does it make them feel? And then we have to think about the moment by which they educate their families on what it is that they've acquired. Because these are actual heirlooms for a lot of people. These are an asset class, and we understand that. So it's less about just creating another shoe. It's about imagining a world and making sure that the shoe is the complement to the hero who's the protagonist in that narrative. So it's very, very, very nuanced.
You understand that at a different level, but getting those around you to understand that good isn't good enough, the standard, I mean, we had a conversation about this a couple of weeks ago about the standard and getting everyone on board because, you know, we're cut from a cloth and we care so much. The real challenge is getting others around us to understand what that standard really, really means. How do you do that?
I mean, the first piece is being congruent in what you say and what you do. I can't ask people to do something I don't do myself.
Right.
You probably heard MJ say that in The Last Dance. I'm from Chicago, so I carry the same energy that he took to the court and to the boardroom. And so the first piece in any form of leadership and galvanizing people against a mission is having shared moments of joy. So for my team, I took them back to Chicago, took them to MJ's crib. We actually got a chance to experience the magic of being in his environment when he was winning championships. Then we went and volunteered on the South Side where I'm from, got them in a community amongst the people who understand Mike Jordan, not Michael Jordan. Because in Chicago, we call the shoes Mike's. We're on a first name basis with him and a product. And so in order for someone to care, once again, it goes back to emotional connectivity. People don't care about the work, they care about the people at work and the memories that you create together. So that's how I've been engendering this spirit of what we do is bigger than any one of us.
That's right.
And then you put that into our operating system. And so for us, we call it 23rd century design. And that name alone denotes a feeling of this being timeless, because when you say 23rd century, that's 200 years from now.
That's right.
So you decouple ego from outcome.
Yeah.
And I explained to them that none of us are bigger than the movement that we're all a part of starting. And over time, with consistency, over time, with showing them, you know, the introspection I do for myself, leveling up on my own education, continuing to push myself, it becomes infectious. Yeah. And so I feel very fortunate and blessed that I have a large organization of people that have the same spirit that I have of going out and discovering greatness in their own definition of it.
I mean, you were speaking to my next question regarding community. These are, like you said, these are so much more than just sneakers at this point.
Yep.
And it's also about community investment. So how does the community investment, how does that investment guide the way that you design?
Yeah, I mean, it all starts with the kid. So for me, there's a fundamental flaw in the way people think about design. Most people think that we provide solutions. We actually ask the best questions. That's the goal. Because the questions that you ask help you determine the direction that you head in, whether it's physical technology. And just for context, I've worked in Silicon Valley for a long time. I've built digital products. I've done software, hardware, everything in between, and soft goods. The one consistent principle that I bring to every single industry is the notion of insatiable curiosity. Because that's required. You have to have childlike wonder to dream of the impossible, to do things that the world has never seen, and to do it fervently and consistently. Because if design was just about providing solutions, then we become short order cooks. We just make stuff. Our job is to make stuff better, and at the highest level, make the impossible possible. And you have to be embedded in the community authentically, not just an observer of culture, but a participant. Because a lot of people may conflate being in the comments on a post from being in a conversation.
Two different things.
You have to be in a conversation.
Yeah.
So that's how we try to build the culture internally, is by ensuring the people we hire, the people we partner with, are authentically in the conversation. They're not in the comment section.
Yeah. Well, again, you just spoke to a collaboration. Collaborations are obviously massive in the footwear industry. Jordan has been the guiding light when it comes to proper collaborations. But what's the one principle that goes into who you guys choose to collaborate with?
I mean, it's pretty simple. Do they have a bit of Mike magic? You know, do they have what he has? And two great examples of that right now in the brand are Jalen Hurts and Nigel Sylvester. Like, I have the good fortune of meeting these gentlemen and knowing these gentlemen and hearing their thoughts when no one's around. Hearing how they view themselves when no one's around. Like with Jalen, when people's online are like, hey man, he's not looking at his Super Bowl ring. And his mindset is, why? That was last season. I got to focus on this season. You can't teach that. You have to embody that spirit, that hunger. And so that's one of the key filters. Do they want to earn it? Because everything that Mike did, he earned. None of it was given to him. So that's probably the number one word that has been used to describe what it's like to be Jordan-esque. Whether it's me in my role or an athlete or a partner we work with, they've earned the right to bear the jump man on their product. And that's a very different way of looking at a brand mark. It's not a graphic embellishment. It's a symbol of excellence, a symbol of greatness. You have to earn that. So it does help us with strategically filtering out people who are cool, but maybe not necessarily a right fit for us.
You told me some things about Jalen the other day that were pretty, a lot of stuff that I didn't know about Jalen and the things that you see in him that you also saw in MJ. Can you talk about that a little bit?
Yeah, it's amazing to be in a position to witness a mindset manifest itself in an outcome. I was fortunate to see it with Mr. Jordan, fortunate to see it with Bean, with Kobe Bryant, fortunate to see it with musicians and artists. But Jalen is the closest thing, in my humble opinion, that we've seen as an athlete that's like Mike.
Wow.
His dedication, his ability to retain information, his ability to learn, his ability to communicate, but more importantly, his ability to self-reflect and push himself, it's unmatched. It's unmatched. He's unfazed in pressure. He's a stoic philosopher at his heart, a very prolific writer and a very prolific thinker. And so when you see someone that's playing intellectual chess and proving to themselves that their only competition is their inner me, that's the enemy, how they think, how they see the game, how they see themselves, how they drown out the noise. It's eerily similar to watching, a Game 5, Game 6 Michael Jordan. Like, Jalen is always locked in. And so therefore, the people that work with him who have the good fortune of being the steward of his brand, the steward of his business, they all are locked in. And so you could just feel it in his aura that he's destined for greatness.
Speaking of intellectual chess, there are a lot of young people who are just about to enter their first foray into whatever business they decide to do. And once you get in there, you realize you're going to have to play chess. But it's a skill that you have to learn. It's something that you have to learn through experience. What's the one thing that we can tell a lot of these young people in here when it comes to playing that game of chess and how things can be manipulated going into it? What's one advantage that we can sort of give them in going into these corporate spaces as young people, young black people?
Yeah, I would honestly say don't expect you from other people. If you're clear, you're compassionate, you're empathic, and you're showing up on time, you're doing your job, and you get frustrated when someone else don't, that's you expecting you from someone else. So you have to allow people to present themselves as they are. And you also have to make room for the fact that because you wouldn't do something doesn't mean that someone else wouldn't do it. There are Machiavellian leaders. There are people who would do things that you may consider not aligned with your morals and your values, but for them, that's how they want to get after it. Doesn't mean you need to participate. So be very, very, very focused on ensuring that you're observing but not participating. Because in your first few years and within the corporate structure, you're just trying to learn, how does my style apply to their offense? How does my style apply to their operating system? And at the same time, you want to know, what is the operating system giving back to me? Am I learning? Am I growing? So be very clear on your strengths and weaknesses. With myself, I've always been the first person to assess my opportunities of growth and the things that I'm strong at. And I try to find people who are significantly better at the weak points in my offense or my defense, so then I can learn from them. Because the goal of young people in corporate America should be not to seek a yes, but to eliminate the way they tell you no. And you do that through introspection and self-governance. If you know that you're not prepared, if you know that you don't have all the pieces, don't fake the funk. Because preparation kills frustration. Preparation kills fear. So if you show up in your moment and you're prepared, regardless of the outcome, you know that you put the work in. Yeah. It's only when you know you haven't taken all the steps. You weren't self-examining enough to know how someone can stop you from getting to where you're trying to go. Yeah. So it really starts with your mindset. It really starts with you being able to self-govern, self-regulate your emotions, and know what to give energy to and what to just watch and not participate in.
Wow. Yeah, give it up. Seriously. Yeah. I want to talk more about mindset, though. You and I have been doing what we've been doing for a while now, and I'm sure 20-year-old J-May, he had a specific goal, and those goals have changed. The goalpost has moved, and you slowly start to realize what you thought you wanted and you got, it wasn't actually the thing that you wanted. So just speak to, can you just speak to like figuring out exactly what you want in this industry and how it changes and what to do about it?
Yeah, that's a great question. I mean, I'm one of a handful of people that I know that can say they grew up to be what they wanted to be as a kid. At 7 years old, I told my parents when I was in the hospital I wanted to grow up to be Dr. Lucius Fox, and Michael Jordan is Bruce Wayne, and I'm gonna create gadgets for Batman, and I'm gonna golf, and we're gonna be best friends. It was a whole plan, and I feel fortunate I've grown up to actually become like Dr. Lucius Fox in real life, you know, and work with Michael. But what changed wasn't the goal, but it was the appreciation of the steps to take to get to the goal. Yeah. For me, ambition was a trauma response. I was trying to outrun what I thought was defining me by coming from the south side of Chicago. And I've had everything that people think they want, notoriety, resources, but the true thing that I know at this point in my life is I want to feel content. And you know, and that's something that no job, no title, no outcome can give you. No LinkedIn update can give you the feeling of being content.
You think you will, but once you get to that point, you won't feel it.
It's fleeting.
Yeah.
It's fleeting, and these are temporal things that do not give you true value, because a human life is invaluable. You can't put a price on that. Time is invaluable. It's a precious resource that is perishable. You don't get more of it. And so once you get to a place where you've achieved everything, but you still feel disconnected from your outcome, that's when you know that what's missing isn't more stuff. What's missing is appreciation for what you have, what you've done, for your journey, and feeling content. Because at a certain point, none of this really matters, right? At the end of the day.
Bruh, listen.
You know, and so for me, I try to remind myself, I'm just a grown kid that gets to draw sneakers.
That's it.
And this is supposed to be fun, and this is supposed to, you know, be 7-year-old Jason's dream. And so I don't take myself too seriously anymore. And I understand that my job now in this position is to be a wayfinder or a lighthouse for other people who are navigating. I don't always need to be the spotlight.
That's right.
My job is to put other people in positions where they can flourish and they can see themselves achieving what they hope to achieve in their life.
Legacy, man.
1000%.
I want to get back to tech because so much is going on when it comes to the technology of footwear at this point. So when you guys are in the room innovating new models, new technology in sneakers, how much time is spent in those rooms figuring out what needs to be improved in some of these shoes?
Yeah, I would say I would zoom out. You know, what needs to be improved with human performance? You know, footwear is one way to help athletes or help people who want to get fit or be physically active improve. It's also mindset, nutrition, rest, recovery, you know, conditions environmentally.
Yeah.
I mean, there's so many different factors that contribute to an athletic endeavor. And so we start with the macro view, looking at humans across every single facet of productivity and performance and realizing, okay, how can we uniquely serve this demographic of people that are striving to do this thing? Yeah. And once we get through these strategic filters, the process itself reveals the step that we need to take. Is it a shoe? Is it content? Is it an experience? Is it apparel? So we service the entirety of the human endeavor. Whoever wants to pursue things that seem impossible, that's where we want to be. And if the product needs to be a piece of footwear to help them do that, so be it. But we never start with an item or a solution looking for a problem. We try to give ourselves the space to examine a human condition, where it is, where they want to go, and then we insert what is the right level of design, the right level of technology, the right level of innovation. Because when people think about innovation, you literally are thinking the product itself. We don't. We look at the entire value chain. So how we recruit, that's innovative. And you're going to see more of that in the next few months of us changing how this industry finds, recruits, and onboards talent. So even that alone is where creativity and innovation can have a lot of residual impact and residual value. So we have to think about everything. innovate for the athlete, innovate for the employee experience, innovate in the way that we disagree or agree. So there's nothing that we don't do that doesn't have a creative lens, and there's a system that we stood up called visioneering. Yeah. And the system allows us to examine every single operating function of our business with a level of creativity and rigor. So it's pretty exciting because this is a new dawn for where Jordan Brand is headed, and I'm grateful to witness it because this is a reflection of Michael. This man has went from being a basketball player to being a global icon, but he hasn't stopped innovating in his identity.
That's right.
Owns a NASCAR team. You know, now he has one of the top, spirit companies on the planet. He's a prolific thinker, and so we have to keep up with his interest and his taste. And so as he evolves, we evolve. Yeah. So it's a fun time to be there because we're now entering into our third phase of growth, which is exceptional.
Well, Mike also loved music, and music is a huge factor. And I'd be remiss if I didn't talk about how you brought the team over to catch a tiny desk one time.
Oh, yeah.
Like, in these spaces, I imagine there's music all over the place, but what does music do for how does music inspire the way that you design?
Oh, man, it's nutrition is the fuel that athletes use. Music, art, culture, that's the fuel that creatives use because it feeds our imagination. And so when I design, I'm always chasing a feeling that I first had when I heard Illmatic and I Love Supreme. It's the only two albums that I play when I'm creating. Sonically, they're perfect. The themes of each I relate to heavily. With John Coltrane at that time writing an album for an audience of one saying thank you to God for saving him.
Yes.
Beautiful. Illmatic, retrospective, introspective, looking at his conditions and then writing as if he was Langston Hughes, giving cultural commentary about the inner city. And just the fact that these two albums could coexist, at the same time in this timeline, and they both have the same level of reverence for the Black experience and reverence for creativity and self-expression, I have to take that energy and transmute it into the product. So anytime I create something, I'm thinking, I want kids to pick this up and study our product the same way I sat in my mom's car in a Honda Civic when Illmatic came out in 1994 and listen to it on repeat for 6 hours.
And they study it. When you look at what you guys have done, each one is an album.
Each one is an album. Its own world, its own theme, its own sonic tapestry, its own rhythm. So without music, man, I really fundamentally believe that what we do would not be as vibrant.
Yeah. Of the athletes that you work with now when it comes to the technology, like, I know Kobe was very hands-on, but who on the roster at this point is the most hands-on in the process?
Most hands-on, that's a great question. Each of them contribute differently, but I would say the most involved in terms of wanting to continue to learn and make themselves available. A lot of it is scheduling, right?
Yeah.
Different athletes have different schedules, but I would say honestly, Jalen and Nigel.
Yeah.
I've been very fortunate to build a relationship where, along with sports marketing, they'll reach out and we'll have conversations on every single facet of our operating principles. How do you make this? How does this happen? What's your schedule? And so by them understanding the language of our sport, because creativity is a sport, like I tell people, creativity is my jump shot.
That's right.
I teach them how to compete in our world because we know everything about them. When they show up, we know everything about football, know everything about BMX. We know more about them than they know about the people across the table who are creating for them. So I care deeply about informational parity because when you work on a corporate structure, you're there for a specific amount of time, but that athlete may be signed longer than you're in that position. Right. So my job is to teach them enough of the information so regardless of who's in this seat, they're able to still get value from that relationship. So I would say those that I've been fortunate enough to lean in with, the Jalens and the Nigels, you've seen the results. You've seen how they've participated in top, and you're seeing how they're helping us move the brand forward.
Well, I'll tell you what, man, I hope these young people are really, really soaking up the information that's being thrown out because it's the most valuable thing in the world. And I want to take this opportunity to let you know, A, I love you, brother, but also
you too, bro.
What people have seen, what I've been able to do with the Tiny Desk, there's so much correlation to what you've inspired me to do. So I just wanted to thank you for that, and thank you for being here today, and thank you for doing this, man. This is a dream come true, man. I love you, G.
Love you too, G. Right. Appreciate you, buddy. Yes, sir.
So I think we got some Q&A now, right? We got some questions? Anybody got some questions? Is there one?
Yeah, ask now.
Yeah,
hold your peace. All right. I think they might bring you
I think a mic's coming.
Yep.
Hey,
nice.
fellas, over here.
Okay.
My name is Bryson Livingston. I lead digital experience over at Invesco QQQ. Really appreciate both of you for being here today, but also what you do to drive culture in your day professions. And my question is sort of for both of you. How do you navigate all the things that are happening in the world that are changing constantly, culture, politically, socially, and take that back to your day jobs and deliver something that is on brand but is also culturally relevant to what's happening around us?
Yep. Want to take that?
I talk to a lot of people, like, when it comes to what we're doing at Tiny Desk, I spend a lot of time in our comments. I spend a lot of time on social media just finding out what we are doing and what we aren't doing. You know what I mean? Because ultimately we serve the audience and they inform so much of what we do. So it's just keeping my ear really, really close, being outside and again, being immersed in the culture is most important, because most of the people within these big corporations, quite frankly, they ain't outside. So it's very, very important for someone who's steering that ship to be immersed within the culture that they're serving. It just has to work that way.
Absolutely. Yeah, and to build on what Bobby just said, I think it's having a clear understanding of who you are as a brand, who you are as a person. Leaning into authenticity is key, because you have to move at the speed of culture. But the problem is there's no longer a monoculture, right? Everybody's not going to agree that this is the movie of the year, the album of the year. There's no even subcultures anymore. It's microcultures with very specific nuance, where people are looking for shared common interests, not shared characteristics. And so the old way of thinking of culture has to be examined, and the only thing that's going to cut through in the age of AI are human interaction. Yep. There's going to be an overemphasis in feeling, in the visceral relation between touching a material. And that's where knowing who you are is going to be key. Yep. Because the people who will win in this new era will be unapologetically themselves. Okay. Unapologetically yourself, consistently. Because consistency is what's going to be a luxury. When everything's changing, the thing that you can come back to that gives you comfort, that gives you peace, because you know it's always high quality, that's going to cut through. Yep. So I don't get afraid of change. Change is inevitable. Growth is optional. So the only thing you have to do in this season is to grow in proportion to your interest and grow in proportion to your authenticity. That doesn't need to shift. So anytime you see brands that lose themselves, where they go from being rock and roll to hip hop in the same year, it's like, who are you? Are you cosplaying, or is this authentically who you are? Because you think about the generation that is facing the rise of deep fakes, digital twins, and we see all the work at AfroTech. I've been in it for a long time. I've been part of creating it. The things that will cut through will have a human connection, a human interaction, and a level of craft that feels real. There's a big push for kids going back to flip phones. Like my daughter, who's turning 18, and my son, they're like, man, we so jealous you grew up in the 90s. That was right before technology took over. You can go outside, leave your phone, and not worry about it. We missed that. So think about this notion of human interaction being a luxury, right? We take it for granted that we're all here. 50 years from now, will this be us, or will it be the skins that we've downloaded to represent us because we don't want to travel? So while we still can sit and talk and build, especially with our culture, remember the power of the griot. Remember the power of story and human interaction, and that will help you cut through all the noise.
Maybe I'm up?
Yeah.
All right. Jason and Bobby, thank y'all so much. Honestly, just stumbled into this talk. I didn't expect it to be so powerful and impactful, so I appreciate that. My name is Gozier, and my question is for you, Jason. You mentioned that ambition was like a trauma response for you. I think that was an interesting way to put that. I just want to know what gave you that paradigm shift. Like, what made you feel like you had to start educating yourself so much? Because just based on the way you spoke right now, I feel like it's very obvious that you're someone who has taken a lot of time to educate themselves very well and just also learn how to speak very well.
Yeah, it's a great question. And thank you for pulling up on us, man. We don't take people's time for granted. The honest answer is very long ago, I had to learn how to accept myself. And I found out at 38 that I was neurodivergent, that I have autism. And so when you find out later in life that the thing people said was a negative about you as a kid, he's special, he's different, he has interests that don't look like the interests other kids should have. And then you discover as an adult, oh, my brain works differently. you start to give yourself a lot more grace. And you start to give others grace because we all wear a mask and we don't know what's behind that mask. And so for me, I know that I'm having a human experience for the first time. Like I've just, this is the first time I've been 45 years old, right? And so I don't put myself in a position where I live life doing subtraction of who I am not. Oh, I'm not this, I'm not that. I just remind myself of who I am and who loves me and who gives me the ability to feel valued so I can be content. Because I can tell you, going most of your life not knowing that your brain was different, but feeling people have interactions with you that were questionable simply because I don't make eye contact that easily. Sometimes I leave large events because I feel the energy of everyone, I'm paying attention to everything. Now I give myself a lot more grace. And so I've had to go back in time in a lot of ways and thank my younger self for enduring without the knowledge that I have as a grown man. And then the second piece is, most of my heroes either lived in antiquity or they're fictitious characters. And so I find a lot of joy in reading graphic novels and anime and manga. I've been doing that since I was a kid, and reading about people like Marcus Aurelius or Suryata Kita, who is the inspiration for the movie Lion King. If you don't know who Suryata Kita is, he wrote the Mayden Charter. And he was also neurodivergent and physically impaired. And he did this in the late 1200s, right, from the kingdom of Mali. And this man's story was passed down through generations with the Mayden Charter without any documentation. And he's the great uncle of Mansa Musa, if you want to know where he came from. So for me, I look for examples of who I am through my faith, the living word, and through people in antiquity, because I know that I'm not different. I'm not, divergent. I'm here for a purpose during this time. And once you're able to accept that your gifts and talents are meant for you to use them for the benefit of the collective, once again, you could decouple ego from outcome. It's not about me. It's never been about me. I'm just part of a lineage of people that decided to persist all the way back to the origins of man. Like, I'm tied to people who've overcome. So my job is to not feel sorry for myself and to be, like I mentioned earlier, a lighthouse to help other people navigate. So that's why I'm open about the challenges I faced, because I don't want y'all to think you get to this level and you ain't had no losses. Losing's part of winning. The point is to keep going. And that's it. I refuse to give up on myself, and I refuse to give up on us. Because if we don't believe in us, then who will?
Hello.
Caller number 9.
Hi.
Say hello.
I'm way back here, though.
Oh, I see you.
It's nice to speak to you, Jason and Bobby. Kind of similarly to the gentleman over there. Wow, this echo is crazy. Kind of similarly to the gentleman over there, I did stumble into this session, but I'm not making any ill assumptions when I say that this is one of the best sessions that I've attended at AfroTech.
Thank God.
I really love the point that you said about not giving people the power to tell you no twice for the same reason. Just continuing to find value in everything that you do, even if you don't get the decision that you initially wanted. But the question that I wanted to ask you both is about being creative entrepreneurs. Because it's one thing to be a creative with your own endeavors, kind of similar to what I do. I have a creative agency named Send Your ETA, where I connect creators with one another to build genuine community in New York City. And I also have a business called Growing with Gabby, where I help students get connected to scholarship opportunities so they can go to school. So I just wanted to ask you guys how you are able to navigate the balance and frustrations that inevitably come when you have to create within a larger institution that has its own goals and priorities that might be competing with your own.
Well, you're already doing it because you're establishing your own thing up front. I'm at NPR, Jason's at Jordan Brand. We will not be there forever, you know what I mean? But thankfully, I have my own thing. I'm a DJ first. Everything that I do at NPR is informed by my DJ mind, so no matter what, I'm gonna have that. Same for Jay. I mean, he does so many other things, brilliant, amazing books, speaking, obviously. So you have to establish those things because ultimately these relationships with these big corporations will end one way or another. So you have to, it's a way of knowing yourself by having those outside entities to kind of influence everything that you're doing within. And those things, if those companies understand that and they support that, it's going to make what you do with them a whole lot better. So, I mean, you already kind of unlocked it by creating your own.
Absolutely, absolutely, absolutely. Good for that. Yeah. Shout your business out too. I would say, to answer it simply, when you're an entrepreneur, you have to think deeply about what you can take with you. And most of the time, it's your network, your reputation, and your learnings, not the intellectual property you created. And if you're worried that your one idea is going to be taken, then my question back to you is, you only have one idea? That's it? You just got one? That's it. If all you got is this one big thing, you think that's going to... So your job is to remain curious so that if somebody takes away your jump shot, you got defense. If you can't play defense, then you can go and set a screen. If you can't set a screen, you can be on the bench cheering for your teammates. If you can't be on the bench, you can make sure everybody's at practice on time. You got to figure out what role you're playing within the team construct at every single moment. In entrepreneurship, if it doesn't have a massive outcome because you don't control end-to-end execution, what you do control is your knowledge acquisition and your network expansion. And so through entrepreneurship, you get to meet people that you normally wouldn't meet in your job in the organization that are like-minded. And then from there, it just compounds. And when those people who are like-minded, they decide to leave, they decide to build something, they're thinking of you. So it's less about what you can execute while you're there. It's more about what's transferable from your moment. What skill set is transferable to any industry? And so when I left Nike and went to the Silicon Valley, I went to grad school at Stanford, but that's not being in the Valley. That's not working in tech. That's being adjacent to it. So I had to say, what's transferable from footwear design, industrial design to this industry? It's the understanding of human factors. It's the understanding of narrative, the understanding of craft. And those broad categories allowed me to go sit within the tech ecosystem, join venture capital firms, build technology, because it was the transferability of curiosity, not the transferability of designing sneakers to Michael Jordan. That wouldn't translate, to working on real sim physics or recurrent neural networks. Those are different things. And so that's what you look for, is the transferability of the skill sets you develop. Because if you can't advance in corporate America because maybe you're not being seen, you can still leverage corporate America to learn. Yeah. It's okay to use corporate America structure to learn and accrue skills that you can take with you. That's also part of the benefit package you receive, is the knowledge. So when you think about compensation, we always think it's the money. No, it's the knowledge. The knowledge will outlast the paycheck because that helps you get to your next thing. So I would say look at it that way, and that'll help you as an entrepreneur.
Wrap up.
Wrap up.
Thank you all so much, guys. Really appreciate it. Thank you, Jason, again, man.
Thank you, my brother. Appreciate you.
That was next level. Thanks, Jason and Bobby. To close out our innovation stage this year, we're ending with a true visionary, someone who quite literally launches moonshots. Please welcome Astro, captain of Moonshots at Alphabet's X, in conversation with Jeff Nelson. They'll explore how radical ideas become world-changing breakthroughs and why imagination just might be humanity's most powerful tool. Dr. Astro is the captain of Moonshots at X, Alphabet's innovation lab focused on leadership. X has focused on developing breakthrough technologies to address global challenges. Under his leadership, X has launched pioneering projects such as Waymo, Wing, Verily, and Google Brain. A scientist, inventor, and entrepreneur, he also holds numerous patents across hardware and software technologies. And you should already know Jeff Nelson, co-founder and COO at Blavity, Inc. Now, take a look at greatness.
hello. How's it going? Make some noise. You all can be louder than that. What an AfroTech conference we've been having, huh? Are y'all ready for a great conversation? Astro, welcome.
You guys gotta try that again. Are we gonna have some fun? All right.
So you gotta tell them we like energy. This is gonna be a great conversation. Astro, thank you so much for being here. I am so excited to have this conversation. And I think the audience has seen from the video a little bit about the work that you do and that you lead, and they've heard your bio. But you lead a company that is known by many names. You know, you are the captain of Moonshots at X, not the social network. Some people know it as Google X. Some people know it as Alphabet's X or the Moonshot Factory. Can you first just start and tell us what is X and why are moonshots important? What is the work that you all actually do? Demystify that for us.
Sure. So Alphabet set up their Moonshot Factory about 15 years ago. And the idea was not that we would look backwards at Google and try to fix Google's problems, but instead, our mission has always been go out in the world and find new problems to have, and then hopefully solutions for those. So very explicitly from the beginning, we only fish at the intersection of purpose and profit. So we want to make enduring businesses in the world that would be really good for the world and that would be profitable businesses at the same time. So that's explicitly our mission. And our mission is not to do things that the venture community would go do, but to solve more system-wide problems, the kind of things that have more risk, that take more time, because the systems out there, academia and the venture world, tend not to be able to get at a certain class of problems when they're big enough, weird enough, long enough term, risky enough. The whole system just won't deliver on them. So X is trying to deliver on some of those. And so Google Brain, this is the source of the explosion of machine learning that most of you probably spent the last couple of days talking about. Waymo, which is certainly enjoying that explosion of machine learning that's happening, self-driving cars, drones for package delivery, that's our company Wing that spun out from X, Verily, the life science business, and others that we can talk about. These are all examples of what we would call moonshots. Maybe just so I can give the blueprint so when we talk about moonshots, it's clear. At least when we say moonshot, what we mean is, one, huge problem with the world that you want to solve. Can't say that, it's kind of an academic exercise. Two, there has to be some kind of science fiction sounding product or service that you can imagine making, even if it's not very likely you could make it, that if you made it, we could agree ahead of time it would resolve that huge problem with the world. And then three, there has to be some kind of breakthrough technology, some reason to believe, not that it'll definitely work, but at least that it's a testable hypothesis. You have an argument about how we could make that, and we could go try that argument and see if you're right or not. So that's basically what it feels like inside X.
That's fascinating, and I really don't know if our audience can appreciate just the fact that so much of the work that has come from X is used in their day-to-day lives. I mean, you mentioned quite a few. So you mentioned Google Brain. I want to poll the audience. How many people, just make some noise, if you use an AI chatbot, make some noise? Are you all aware that that started with Google Brain? That Google Brain was responsible for this realization in the underlying architecture of machine learning and how we build large language models, and now everyone is using it. You mentioned Waymo. Anybody ever get driven in a Waymo? Make some noise. I'm still waiting for my first Waymo ride. I might have to.
They're testing in this city right now.
I'm going to have to figure out a way to get that. And so one of the things you mentioned is this idea of the intersection of purpose and profit. And so we're here at AfroTech, and there are so many entrepreneurs here, so many founders. And oftentimes I talk to founders, and what they're working on is so mission-driven. It sounds, the world needs it. I'm like, that's such a great solution. But part of my background in sort of preparing people to raise capital is, well, how are you going to build a business out of it? How are you going to raise money? So can you talk about, for X, where does that evaluation of, as you said, can this be a business, right? Obviously, is it going to impact the world, but at what level do you figure out, okay, here's the business model behind it? Is it a part of the initial hypothesis of the moonshot, or does it come later?
It can be at the beginning and it can come later. If you were at X and you had proposed something, if it's resolving we can agree that this science fiction sounding product or service would actually resolve some huge problem with the world. If you say, I've got a way to cure cancer, we're not going to start by arguing about the business model.
Yeah.
We'll get to that, and like, you need to be able to make money or it's not going to help the world the way you hope. But that won't be the first thing we're going to argue about. We're going to argue about, can you really cure cancer, right? There are other things where the business model is so unforgiving, you think you have a way to, store and release energy in a way that's better than chemical batteries. Okay, but like the gravimetric density of batteries, the volumetric density of batteries, sort of how much it costs per kilowatt and per kilowatt hour, like those things are commodities in the world, and you have to know those numbers and have a reason to believe you can beat those numbers, or it's just not going to matter. Right? And so we're going to talk pretty early about the techno-economics in your sort of battery moonshot. So it'll depend what you're bringing to us when we talk about it and how we talk about it. But by the time it leaves X, it has to have really largely burned down the risk on the technology side, on the product side, and on the business side.
So you talk a lot about the successes that have come out of X, and there are some really big names. People often hear the story of the successes. Can you talk about some of the failures?
Spoiler alert, it's almost all failures. People ask us all the time, like, how do you predict the future so accurately? And the secret is, we predict all the futures. And of course, that would be ruinously expensive if we tried to predict all the futures and then ran them like startup companies with each one of these hundreds, thousands of things over the last decade, where everyone's like white knuckling it. I gotta make this work. I gotta make this work. If we did that all the way, it would cost a crazy amount of money. We would never do that. That's not rational for any investor, Alphabet or otherwise, to spend the money on. So we have started more than 1,000 things over the last decade. But then as soon as we start them, if you've proposed, you say you can cure cancer, look, I sincerely hope that you've got a cure for cancer. But our hit rate is 2%.
Wow.
Of the 100+ things we start every year, 2% will still be around and thriving, ready to turn into enduring businesses kind of 6 years later, roughly, when they graduate from X. So you have a 98% chance of being wrong.
Wow.
If you are going to tie your sense of self-worth while you work at X to you being part of that 2%, you have a 98% chance of being miserable and hating me.
Yeah.
Or hating yourself, I guess, depending on who you're going to blame for that.
Yeah.
What if we recontextualize this not as you suck or you won in that 98 2% game, but as we're going on a learning journey? We collectively are going to look at a lot of things. You've picked one right now that you're going to look at, and you're going to take some of our money, and you're going to run to ground, could this be a once-in-a-generation opportunity? But we're giving you the money to answer that question, not to win. And if you come back with the answer no, that is just as valuable to us as the answer yes. If the answer is, it's looking less good than we thought, fine. We shoot it in the head, not you. You get to stay at X, and you're going to work on the next moonshot, right? And if it is looking really good, great, we'll double down on it. And that's how, over 6 years, we get from 100+ things down to, more like 2 a year that we actually graduate.
So that is fantastic perspective that people should have. I think often people fear failure. And what you're saying is that, failure can be a lesson, and a lesson in and of itself is valuable. And an interesting twist to that idea is that because people fear failure, they tend to continue to be a dead horse, so to speak. So they may have an idea, they're working on a startup, they're like, hey, I want to do this thing, and they've been at it for 4, 5, 6, 10 years, and they haven't made any money, they haven't gotten any traction. And so when do you sort of understand that, okay, we tried this, we had an idea, and when do you declare failure? What are the signals that we failed and we've learned the lesson and it's time to move on?
The worst case scenario at X, though this definitely happens, is that I have to come to a team, put my hand on their collective shoulders and say, it's time, I'm calling it. But the best case scenario, and this happens more than you would think, is that the team raises their hand and says, we're really proud of having started this journey. We're really proud of how we explored this thing. It was the right thing to explore, but given this new information that we've built over this period of time, it's looking like this thing is not pulling X's average up, it's actually pulling X's average down. That doesn't mean that this thing, whatever, we just ended a fusion project we've been working on for almost 5 years, just a few months ago. That team made a 250-page slide deck about why they were stopping their project. And they got a standing ovation at our all hands. And now I guarantee, and they're all still working at X, all the ones that wanted to. I guarantee you those people feel smart for having ended their project, for having shown intellectual discipline, intellectual honesty in the process. And the world is so inefficient at getting to radical innovation because everyone's out there beating their individual dead horses in this ecosystem which in no way rewards them doing anything but continuing to beat their dead horse. The people who are beating those dead horses, these things they've been trying to limp through for the last decade, why would they do something else if they're not going to get rewarded for it?
Yeah.
So we're trying to create a microcosm where you get rewarded for stopping things if that's the best way to learn and move forward.
I think that speaks so well of the culture at X that people can announce to everyone, we failed, and get a standing ovation, so to speak. When you are building your team, what are the traits that are integral to someone who can come to work at X and have that mentality of being able to be transparent and own up to whether you want to think of it as failure or we had an idea and it was wrong? I mean, in many ways, it's the scientific method.
Exactly. No scientist, no good scientist would end an experiment with, I failed. If you have conceived of something you're going to do as success or failure, it is not an experiment. You are heavily trying to bias the outcome, which is fine in as much as that maybe mildly improves your chances of getting a yes. But intellectual honesty is out the window. If you're actually in the truth-seeking business, which we had better be if we have 98% of the rocks we look under is like, nope, nothing under that rock. We need to maximize intellectual honesty, which means from the beginning, I don't even want it to be about failure. I want it to be about knowledge seeking. Is this thing as exciting as we look, and if so, how? And so at the end, you don't even have to say you failed. We ran this to ground. The answer is this is not a once-in-a-generation opportunity. High five, go try the next one.
I might have to come and see if I can work at X.
That's
This
right.
sounds amazing. And you know, I think balance is important. And as we talked about, failure is part of the process. And I almost want to use a different word for it, right? Because as you said,
Learning.
It's learning, right? It's part of the process. But if, you know, 98% miss rate, a 2% hit rate, is an accepted and expected aspect of what you do, how do you balance that and still challenge people to be ambitious? So that they don't just say, oh, you know, we're into it and the first thing we tried didn't work. We're part of that 98%. Let's move on to something else. How do you push people within reason to be ambitious, but also not beat a dead horse, so to speak?
Well, one of the things that we do is if somebody were to propose a moonshot that was like, hey, this seems pretty reasonable. I think we could make money pretty quickly. I think it has a 50% chance of working. We would probably say, not interested. Because, look, in the end, we're trying to maximize the reward-risk ratio of whatever it is we're doing. And so if your thing is truly knocking it out of the park on the reward-risk ratio and the risk happens to be low, okay, fine. I'm not against that. It's not like we like risk. But if we're honest with ourselves, most of the things that have particularly high reward-risk ratio, it's in the high-risk parts of the space. Because no one else is going there. No one else knows how to look through that stuff effectively, or they're doing it with these blinders on because they can't imagine failing, and that prevents them from doing the learning and the pivoting necessary to actually find something great. So we mostly reject people, we reject the people's suggestions when they're trying to sort of sandbag it. We're just not interested, that's not the game we're playing.
Yeah. You know, some in the audience, Astro, I'm sure, are listening to what you're saying and they're inspired. They're like, this sounds great. I wish that I could think like this. I wish that I could work like this. But I don't have the resources that a Google has.
Right.
Right? So I don't have the luxury of being able to have a 98% miss rate. What do you say to that, right? When people think that, well, X can exist because X is backed by the resources of Alphabet. What do you say to that?
First of all, fair game. I appreciate Alphabet playing the long game and thinking long term in how they support us. So I want to appreciate that. That said, this is not about how much money we spend. You would be shocked at how small most of our teams are. A lot of the teams at X are 2 people, 4 people, 6 people, even ones where we're public about them and bragging about them, where they've been around for 4 years. 10 people, 12 people. Now we have a lot of support infrastructure around them, so you can kind of roughly double or triple those numbers if you imagine like what a startup might be like. That's still not that big a team. And we're purposefully under-resourcing these teams, and here's why. If you give people enough money, they will try to solve problems the normal way. But it is literally and explicitly our job, it is like more or less the definition of a moonshot, to not solve things the normal way, to finding highly not normal, highly non-incremental way to address the problem. If you give people enough money, they won't go looking for that because creativity is hard. It's only when you take away enough money to solve it the normal way that they'll be like, okay, I guess I either have to give up or get really creative. And the answer to that at X is, yeah, that's what we're doing. So that's part of it. But let me give you a really crisp example. No matter how small your company is, you have something you're thinking of launching, let's just call it a product to be abstract, in the next 6 months, let's say. I understand the temptation to feel like 6 months isn't enough time, it's going to be a sprint, we have to figure out in the next 2 weeks what the product requirements are, and then we'll like scramble for the next 5.5 months to build it. I totally get that. But I assure you, if you built 3 very different alternatives of that product for the first month, they will all be shitty. I know it because you only had a month. Then you go to some of your alpha customers, the ones who are tolerant of things being pretty broken, and you show them all 3 of those things and say, which of these do you hate the least and why? Get feedback from them for 2 weeks, think about that feedback and synthesize it for 2 weeks. You've now blown 2 of your 4 months. If you then spend 4 months building your product from what you just learned, I guarantee you will have something better at the end than if you had built one thing from the beginning. That is an example of moonshot thinking that anyone in this room could do.
I love that. I mean, that sounds so radical because everything that we're taught as entrepreneurs and founders is the antithesis of that. It is figure out the one thing you should build. What is your MVP? And laser focus on that. And you go find your product market fit and launch. But what you're saying is, I mean, it sounds so simple in hindsight, but we're not taught to think that way.
Right, let me give you an example. I want everyone in your mind to play the following game. Think of the last hard thing you did with a team. Now think about how long it took for you and the team to do that hard thing. Now, imagine that I took away from you all the software, all the hardware, blueprints, whatever, but you get to keep what's in your mind, and everyone on your team, you get to keep those people and what's in their minds. How much time would it take for you to rebuild the right answer now that you know what the right answer is? I've asked this the world over, and I get numbers between about 5% of the time and 20% of the time, depending on how hardware focused it is, and how moonshotty it is, maybe. But let's call it 10% on average. If you could rebuild the right answer, now that you know what the right answer is, in 10% of the time, then 90% of the work was learning, not building. If 90% of what, and of course with moonshots it's even more than 90%, but if for most hard things, 90% of the work is just figuring out what the right questions are, it's not actually the building of the final thing once you know what to build. Everyone is in a learning game, you just don't realize it. And if you get obsessed about being in a learning game, I think things are going to go better. My example about playing 3 things right at the beginning there is just an example of that.
So I'm curious, you talk about these small teams, and you talk about how these teams sort of operate. But what is the organizational structure like at X? What's the hierarchy on these teams? Are they sort of self-governing, self-organizing? What does that look like?
There's a couple Xers here in the audience. Xers, raise your hand for a second in case people want to come say hi to them. I think they would all probably say, if I wasn't in the room, like lightly managed chaos. But that's sort of on purpose because structure and flexibility are not great friends of each other. So you can have very high flexibility, but only in low structure environments. And we're trying to get people to be really creative and do non-normal things. And that necessarily means we have to have a relatively low structure environment. So we spend a lot of time with each other. We're all in the same building together. But there is a lot of self-organization, and a lot of learning happens through osmosis between the teams, honestly.
I'm curious, obviously, Google Brain, as we mentioned earlier, you all sort of gave birth to the AI revolution. So it's kind of weird to say, is AI impacting how you all think about moonshots? I mean, you talk about the process you go through. Now that everyone's using AI, has that at all changed anything about the operational cadence? Has it made it faster to learn these lessons? And can you speak to some of that?
For sure. I mean, I think the way it feels at X is AI is in everything we do, and it would be weird if we had something that didn't involve AI in some way. But it doesn't come up very much. It's sort of like, do you go around bragging to your friends, I use electricity in my startup? Like, yeah, I know you do, but it's kind of a weird thing to say. We all use electricity in our startup, so like, good for you. But AI is basically just becoming one of those things. It would be weird not to use it. So go ahead and use it. But also, since everyone's using it, it doesn't confer an advantage by itself any more than using electricity does. Unless you have something to say about how you're using it differently, or applying it to a domain no one's applying it to, which is a very risky thing to say at this point because everybody's applying AI to everything right now. So, of course, it has definitely sped up how we work, but that's been a gradual thing over the last 15 years.
I want to go back to this idea of the intersection of purpose and profit. And I'm curious for you and you know, X's philosophy overall, you all invest resources into these moonshots. You invest time, you invest years of research, and the 2% that make it, the Waymos of the world, the Google Brains of the world, the Verilees, when others see that and competitors crop up and they say, oh, well, we can do self-driving or we can build LLMs, and they're essentially using the hard work that your team has done, is that affirmation for you that the moonshot worked, or do you in some way sort of feel like, well, envious of that if they get traction that may exceed yours or the offshoot's traction?
Look, first, we actually are trying to help the world. So if we somehow engender the kind of competition that passes us by and they help the world more than we do or faster than we do, I don't know, that's still a kind of success. Maybe it wasn't like first choice for us, but I'm still glad to see that the world is getting the benefits we were hoping for. Second of all, these are long games that we're playing. Look at what happened with Waymo. We started Waymo 15 years ago. And you remember what people were saying? First of all, 3-4 years ago, almost no one was talking about Waymo. But to the extent they were, even though we've been somewhat noisy about it for more than a decade, to the extent they were talking about it at all, they were saying, it's kind of the grandma of that space. They're going kind of slow. Everyone else has passed them by, because there was all this kind of chest thumping out there about self-driving cars. Pew, pew, pew. Yeah. But now fast forward a couple of years, Waymo doesn't seem so dumb anymore. There's like a slow and steady wins the race of like a thoughtfulness to these processes. When you're really trying to change an industry, you have to get a lot of things right. And the people who are the loudest are not necessarily winning, which every entrepreneur in this room has learned the painful way or is in the middle of learning. So you just have to sort of like take a longer view and say like, good for you, keep going, we're doing our thing, you know, and the best solution will win.
I think Waymo is a good example, because I would even say now, I think you're right, 3 or 4 years ago, it's like, oh wow, those are ugly. Wow, the big cameras all over, but now there's sort of a cachet around them. You see them driving around, you're like, oh, that's cool. And now that people can actually request rides in them, there's sort of a coolness factor to it. What do you attribute that to? What for Waymos and you know, for obviously Google Brain, and then the evolution of Bard and Gemini, where these things finally sort of catch on mainstream? Is it just, you know, as you said, it is just the passage of time and the inevitability of that? Or are there intentional things that are done when you say that, hey, this has reached a phase where it's viable, both technologically, but also economically, and we've just got maybe have to figure out the marketing?
Let me use another example from X, Google Glass, which many of you probably heard about. We were too early. That's okay, that's part of our job. Obviously, we're never purposefully going to be too early, but we were too early. That is now having, a big comeback. Google's working in that area, but now, as many of you know, lots of other companies are as well. And I think two things have happened. The technology is more ready than it was 11, 12 years ago when Google Glass was sort of particularly loud. But also society is differently ready. And so I think both of those things had to happen, and they've come together over the last kind of 12, 13 years.
I think Google Glass is such a great example of sort of the challenge of going from prototype to a venture. And I'm sure the entrepreneurs in the audience can relate at a small scale. You may get a successful prototype and you may prove a concept, but then sort of scaling that up. And I can only imagine that there are challenges at scale. What are some of the things that people underestimate that maybe you initially underestimated when you started to lead X, and about the idea that, hey, we've got a prototype and we've proven we can do this, but scaling it up, what's the difficult part of that?
Well, one of our central mantras is get out in the real world as fast as possible, because whatever it is you think is going to punch you in the nose the worst about the real world, you're wrong. And I'm not saying you're wrong because I know better. I'm just saying you're wrong because like the 100 projects before you were all wrong about that. So every time we get a project out in the world, we're like, that's what you care about? That's the hard part? Okay. So, Wing, our drones for package delivery, we were so positive, I cannot tell you how positive we were, that the hover noise when it was above someone's backyard, like dropping a package down, was going to be what bothered them. People just don't care. It turns out that doesn't bother them. Okay? It's actually the sound in forward flight when it's zooming over somebody's house, especially if that person whose house it's zooming over can't yet get deliveries themselves. Those are the people who are pissed off. Okay, really good learning. So we spent a bunch of years and made sure it was a lot quieter in forward flight. You can't figure that stuff out on the whiteboard. You have to just get out in the world, be with communities where you're actually going to be, do it safely in a sandboxed way, and then ask, like real humans, do you like this? How much would you pay for this? What's pissing you off about this? What would you do differently if you had control of this? And you get incredible feedback.
So you mentioned the drones, the delivery drones. And I am curious, we are at AfroTech, and this is a conference in a space that is dedicated to talking about how technology can be shaped and how it impacts Black people and underrepresented communities. So I'm curious, when you think about technology, especially those that touch physical spaces, and you have limited resources and you can't launch everywhere, how do you make those decisions about where you're going to roll out and get into those communities and get feedback to ensure that you are getting representative cross-section so that disparities that currently exist don't just get perpetuated?
There's a lot there, so let me just use an example or two. You can ask more questions. I think this is a really important topic. But using Wing as an example, we're rolling out through Walmart Superstores. It's not the only partner, but it's our single biggest partner. And I think if you look at like a 6-8 mile radius around Walmart Superstores, you will find plenty of underrepresented communities in the areas around Walmart Superstores. They're in large cities. Food deserts partly happen because somebody decides, I can't make enough money in that particular like 30 square block area to like put fresh vegetables there or whatever. But if you have something which for $1 or $2 can bring something the size of a bread box 6 miles, all of a sudden it becomes economical to get fresh vegetables or whatever to a place that maybe before just had a local bodega and the food wasn't as healthy. So I won't claim that Wing was doing it in order solely to solve this problem, but I think this is a nice example where Wing actually is addressing some of those issues.
That's right. And I want to end by looking towards the future. We've talked about so many technologies that are offshoots of moonshots that started at X, and many of which we use on a daily basis. And 10 years ago, 15 years ago, people weren't thinking about these things, and now it's like we can't imagine life without them. I am curious that as you look to the future, and you know the work that you all are doing, and in many ways I think you can see the future. 10, 20 years from now, what are going to be some of the things that are exciting that we'll be talking about, some of the things that you're optimistic we will have been, that X and others will have solved and introduced to the world?
There are a lot. I'm going to give you two quick examples. One, because of A-Life, which we just announced recently, I'm increasingly convinced that biology is in the process from moving from being a science to being an engineering discipline. And I believe that a couple decades from now, we will be making a lot more of humanity's stuff using nature, using biology, than doing it in a 20th century sort of chemical vat kind of process. So I think that's going to be a really big deal. Another one is the circular economy. I think the idea of garbage as something we don't want is going to seem really nuts to us within a few decades. Garbage is just things where we've extracted some of the embodied value out of a thing, and we don't yet understand how to get all the rest of the embodied value back out of it. But I'm telling you, the landfills of today or the oil wells of tomorrow, there's so much opportunity in what we currently throw away, and when humanity gets good at actually reprocessing all of the things, I'm talking about plastic, I'm talking about clothing, I'm talking about e-waste, the building, if this building was knocked down, it would all just go to landfill. And like, we can do better than that, and Matera, one of our moonshots, is making incredible progress in this area. So I think there's a lot of exciting things to look forward to in our future.
I think the future's bright, and I have been so inspired by this conversation, not only because there are tangible and practical things that I think I can take away and the audience can take away, but you all are working on some cool stuff.
Thank you, Jeff. Thanks, everyone.
Thank you, everybody.
And that, my friends, officially wraps up the innovation stage at AfroTech 2025. From creativity and democracy to AI and moonshot ideas, this stage has been all about one thing: pushing what's possible. Thank you to every single speaker, every partner, and especially every one of you who showed up ready to learn, share, and build. I'm your host, Sequoia Holmes, and it has been an absolute pleasure guiding you through these incredible conversations. Until next time, AfroTech, keep creating, keep building, and keep innovating.